We could have approval of these City Commission meeting minutes for May 3rd, 2022.
Motion to approve. Second.
A motion by Commissioner Preston, seconded by Commissioner Parnas. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Acknowledgement of city board meeting minutes for the Education Advisory Board for June 2nd, November 3rd, and December 1st of 2021, January 5th, and February 2nd of 2022, as well as the Community Appearance Board meeting minutes from March 23rd, 2022.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Parnas, seconded by Commissioner Preston. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Approval of our agenda tonight for May 17th, 2022.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Parnas, seconded by Commissioner Preston. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, Madam Clerk.
For those attending via Zoom online, wishing to speak under public comment or on an item that's open for public input, please click raise hand at the bottom of the participants tab, and your audio will be unmuted when you are recognized by their hands. For those attending via Zoom by telephone, please press *9 to raise your hand, and your audio will be unmuted when you are recognized by their hands. Please make sure your audio is unmuted on your end by pressing *6. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our first proclamation we have tonight is in loving memory of Barney Edward Chalker Jr., Eddie as he was called. The Chalker name should be familiar to everyone. If you go outside of our doors out here and you look in the glass cases of past mayors, Barney Chalker Sr. was the former mayor here at the city of Deerfield Beach for quite a long time. And his son, Eddie, passed away just a few weeks ago. The city of Deerfield Beach recognizes one of the loss of this kind of legendary pioneer son. He passed away on March 27th of this year at the age of 88. He was born in Miami, Florida, and he attended Deerfield Beach Elementary and Pompano Beach High School. He graduated from Florida State, go Noles, where he earned a Bachelor of Science and became a member of Alpha Tau Omega fraternity. Mr. Chalker served in the U.S. Army from 1957 to 1960. He was honorably discharged as an E5 sergeant. Mr. Chalker married his college sweetheart, Amelia Sinclair Chalker, on June 21st, 1959. They had 2 children and 2 grandsons. Eddie served Deerfield Beach as a member of the Planning and Zoning Board, our Board of Adjustment, and Civil Service Exam Committee. He was a Shriner and he coached Little League Baseball, where both of his children played and were involved heavily in the pioneer days in Deerfield Beach. Mr. Chalker was involved in the Boca Railroad, where his father was a station master. And as I said, he served as our longtime mayor. Eddie demonstrated great humility through his service to our country, his colleagues, and his family. So now, therefore, I, on behalf of the entire community, the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, extends its sympathy to the family and friends of Barney Edward Chalker Jr. Eddie, he will be missed and he will be remembered always. I know his son Brad is here tonight. Brad, would you like to bring us? We have a certificate of proclamation on behalf of the 98,000 Asian American Pacific Islanders residents in Broward County. That's 98,000 in Broward County. This proclamation acknowledges the month of May as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. God bless you. God bless you. March 16th marked the first anniversary of the Atlanta spa shootings, in which the lives of 6 Asian women were ended. This horrific event was just one of the 11,000 hate incidents targeting Asian Pacific Islanders during the pandemic. News headlines continue to highlight the racism, hate, and violence being experienced by Asian Pacific Islanders across this country. Recent reports are showing that this is still a significant problem in 2022, with the vulnerable populations such as women and the elderly being prime targets of violence and aggression. Now therefore, I, Bill Gans, Mayor of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, in recognition thereof, do hereby proclaim May as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And I believe we have someone here tonight. Is Lynn here tonight to accept this proclamation? Lynn Lackman?
I am, but I'll have my Nirvana accept that honor. Good evening. My name is Nirvana, and we are proud and grateful to accept this proclamation. I'd first would like to say that I am a Deerfield native, but Junior Buck, Deerfield Buck alumni, also work in Deerfield, and most recently a Deerfield resident. So I'm personally proud to have our heritage celebrated in Deerfield region. Thank you for addressing all the hardships that we continue to face, and we hope to continue to overcome them.
Absolutely. Slides and writings, that's it. Thank you so much. Our third item tonight is in honor and recognition of tomorrow, which will be Haitian Flag Day. Whereas the Haitian Revolution was the first and most successful slave rebellion in the Western Hemisphere, and it fueled the widespread movement for freedom through Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa, and served as an inspiration to African American leaders in the 1930s. The Haitian Revolution challenged the world's concept of colonial supremacy by being the first independent Black nation in the world and the second independent nation in the Western Hemisphere. And whereas the Republic of Haiti declared itself a free and independent nation on January 1st, 1804, after 13 years of revolution and war in which over 350,000 people died, most of whom were slaves. And whereas the commemoration of this event was through the creation of a national flag, which represents their intention to live as free men and women in the Western Hemisphere. And whereas the Haitian Constitution of 1987 officially recognized the Haitian flag as two equal-sized horizontal bands, a blue one on top, which represents Blacks and mixed race people, and a red one underneath, which symbolized their blood, and a coat of arms of the Republic placed in the center on the white squared portion that includes the country's coat of arms and the famous phrase, "La union via la force," which meaning, "Through unity we find strength." And whereas the leaders of the first Black Revolution in the Western Hemisphere, wishing to consolidate their freedoms from France, duly renamed the island of Saint Domingue to Haiti, was originally known by its indigenous inhabitants, thus creating a new republic free of the carnage of slavery. And whereas the Haitian diaspora wished to commemorate and remember the sacrifices of the brave men and women who fought to provide them with the cherished gift of freedom, and to extend to the rest of the nations wishing to reach the ideals of liberty, equality, fraternity, and so that they do so by celebrating this cherished symbol every May 18th, everywhere around the world. I therefore, Bill Gans, Mayor of the City of Deerfield Beach, in recognition thereof, do hereby proclaim May 18th, 2022 as Haitian Flag Day.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and on behalf of our senior pastor and leader of the community, all the Haitians, is thank you to for this great honor, and we pray for God's blessing over the city of Deerfield.
Thank you so much.
We are now at the public comment portion of tonight's meeting. Persons addressing the commission shall state his or her name and address and may speak for 3 minutes unless extended for 1 additional minute by the mayor. This is the time of the meeting for public comment on items that are not on the agenda. If you have a public comment regarding an item that is on the agenda, the time to do that is after the title of that item is read into the record and the public comment period for the item is open. No comment shall be made related to the personal life or personal qualities of any person, and no language which would offend persons of ordinary sensibilities shall be permitted.
Former Commissioner.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Richard Rosenzweig from Century Village in Deerfield Beach. Tonight,
Your address, please, sir.
I'm sorry, 97 Farnaby in Century Village. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These things I think we forget in time. The village to come before you tonight, honoring, this is National Jewish American Heritage Month. The month of May, under special proclamation in the Congress of the United States, the joint resolution, which was read by the president, read every year. It's about the 12-year-old situation, which we don't really talk about too much. And I'm Derek Annette is a national historian for the National Museum of Jewish Military History and past department commander in the state of Florida. And understand that the Jews have been here since 1654, coming from Brazil, during the insurrection at that time, into New Amsterdam. In our heritage here over that period of time, Jews fought in every war that the war had, this country's fought in numbers beyond our population. And since that time also, in this country, we have done as much as possible about liberty and justice of our elected officials serving in the Supreme Court, in service in developing medicines and so forth. Every aspect of our life in this country we can be part of and develop into. And that's basically my comment for tonight on that. I have one favor. I'm curious at this point, and information, where do we stand with this request for a third I'm sorry, the third elect us,
Third term.
third term, yeah.
We'll let you know.
I appreciate it. Has it gone up as to the, it has been approved by the commission, I presume, is that correct?
That is correct.
It's gone up to Tallahassee to on the ballot.
When you go to Tallahassee and stay here locally, but I'm happy to answer your question again.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
It's not something I'm in favor of. I'm just curious to follow that.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else, I'm going to close it to the public. To answer your question, I believe that it was approved. It will go to the supervisor of elections to put on the ballot.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, consent board appointments. There's one, so I'm going to read it into the record. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, appointing Nicholas Kearns as a regular member of the Cultural Committee to fill an unexpired term and providing for an effective date.
Commissioner Krosky.
Thank you. We normally don't speak on these consent items, and I believe Mr. Kearns is here hiding in the back. Is he Mr. Kearns? No? It's hard to see through the plexiglass. He's not waving, so I guess it's not him. So I thought it was. My apologies. But anyway, Mr. Kearns is taking the place of Judy Wilson, who's been on the Cultural Committee for many, many, many years. She's not leaving the city. She's not leaving her volunteer efforts. She's just has a new passion. So I just want to thank, I told her I wouldn't embarrass her publicly, but I lied. So she is just a great institution, is part of this community, and we're going to miss her, but I'm glad that we have other individuals willing to step up and take the place and keep these committees rolling. So I just want to thank Judy Wilson for her years and years of service to Deerfield Beach.
Thank you very much. And we all agree with that.
I guess, I don't know if we have to open it to the public, but I'll make that a motion to approve.
Is there anyone from the public here to comment on this item? Not seeing any. I'm going to
Second.
Close it to the public. We have a motion from Commissioner Grosky, and I'm assuming a second from Commissioner Barnes.
So move.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed?
Mayor and Commission, item numbers 5 through 11 are currently on consent.
Okay, are there any polls from the commission? Items 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11. Commissioner Hudak?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Sorry, Vice Mayor. My apologies.
Item 5, with regards to real estate broker, I believe that's for the property over by Southwest 10th Street and 95. correct?
Yes,
I'd like to pull that item and discuss a little bit.
okay. Anyone else? Any other polls? Anyone from the public care to speak on it, either item number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11? Not seeing anyone. Okay,
It's the Commission's pleasure. You could approve items 6 through 11.
all right, so we're looking for a motion.
Motion to approve items 6 through 11.
Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Parnas, second by Commissioner Preston. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Grosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes,
Mayor Gans.
Yes.
Item number 5 is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving an agreement with Colliers International Florida LLC for real estate broker services for the city's property located at 1045 Southwest 11th Way, utilizing the terms of City of Port St. Lucie contract number 20190072, providing for execution and an effective date.
Vice Mayor.
thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As you know, I was a strong proponent of this property being sold to People's Trust. And based on the commission's vote, that was turned down. And now we're forced to go this path here. I think it's vitally important that we move as expeditiously as possible. We had an opportunity to have a $4.3 million building put on that property. The last thing I want is 10 years from now to be known as Mount Drosky. So I think it's vitally important that we move as expeditiously as possible to get this property on the market. And hopefully we can get some strong bidders, because I think it is an ideal property, and I'm very, very hopeful that I was incorrect and that we can find a great use for this property. Thank you.
Thank you. If we're going to name anything, I'd like to have my name associated with that, because I certainly supported Commissioner Drosky's position on that.
We can do that.
Commissioner Parnas?
Count me in as well. The day after we voted, I had several phone calls from developers, including Campbell and Rosemary, Malcolm Butters, Robert Todorov's company, and they are interested in the property. I really feel that the first thing is to get the referendum passed. That's the most important thing, because without that, we have nothing. So as soon as that's on the ballot, we get it passed, then we can look for what's the best use of that property. In the meanwhile, we can think about it. We can talk to people that want to put things on there, get information so that we can come back and make a decision. I don't agree that we need an outside real estate agent to do that. I think the job is ours and our staff. And I think we're capable of doing it without spending the money. It's my opinion.
Thank you. Commissioner Drosky?
That's an interesting point that Commissioner Parnas just brings up. I'd like to hear from staff if they think that they're capable of handling it without a broker, because otherwise this probably wouldn't be on the agenda. But it's certainly something that I think that we can debate and flesh out. The point that I wanted to bring up tonight, pardon me, and I expressed my concerns ahead to the city manager, is that we've already, as Commissioner Parnas noted, have some people that are in the hopper, this particular site. There's several. And so I have a concern paying a commission to somebody who's already, in the fold, so to speak, that there should be a carve out, if you will, for those potential bidders that are already, dealing with the city. Commissioner Hudak, you deal with human resources. If your company were to use a recruiter to hire my company, or anybody were to use a recruiter to hire somebody for our firms, if we have that resume already within house, you don't pay a commission for that. So we have these in house, and so I think there needs to be a carve out, a recess discussion that I would like to have with my colleagues, to have that carve out as part of this discussion, because as I read it and as I talk to the city manager, there is no carve out for that.
Staff might be best to answer.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good evening, Mayor, City Commission, members of the public. We do have a presentation, and we also have a representative from the firm here tonight. So I'd like to allow them the opportunity to present exactly what this firm brings to the table and exactly what they'd be doing through the process. But just to answer just a couple of the questions in terms of staff expertise, make no mistake that this is a commercial real estate brokerage transaction, and we do not have anybody on staff who is a commercial real estate broker and has that expertise. But so therefore, we have engaged this firm, had discussions with them. They, I think their reputation speaks for themselves in terms of their abilities in working with local government on commercial real estate transactions. And if we could just get that presentation up, I'd like to bring the representative up to speak further. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is this good? Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Ken Krasnow. I'm the Vice Chairman of Colliers International. As the City Manager said, we do have a quick presentation, but I've heard some of the commentary, some of which I'll be addressed in this brief presentation, but then I obviously welcome some feedback and some questions that we can get into. So very quickly, overview of Colliers, talk a little bit about the property. I agree with the assessment in terms of where the property is positioned. Not going to talk a lot about the current state of the market, although I will just give you some brief perspective on that. More importantly, I'm going to talk to you about how our sales and marketing process works, and then a timeline, and to Commissioner's point about the fees and how that works. So I'm here representing Colliers International, but I've got a huge team behind me with, as the City Manager said, professionals that are specialists in office, industrial, retail, medical, all specialty practice groups. And behind them is an even deeper group of marketing and research professionals, because our job, as you will see, is to create world-class materials, tell everybody why they need to invest and move to Deerfield Beach, and get that message out to a broad and global audience. So behind me, just so you know, I'm standing here today, but there's a huge team behind me. Next slide talks a lot about, as City Manager says, we are doing this on behalf of numerous municipalities, big cities, large counties, all across the state of Florida, to exactly your point. There's quality economic development, Lori, a bunch of the other staff are knowledgeable, experienced, but what we do is we bring a very specialized process and a global marketing approach, and we've had a tremendous amount of success doing this for multiple municipalities across the state. And so we are, and you will come, as you will see in this process, you will come to recognize us as an extension of your team. So this is not just a one-off transaction that we're here tonight. We're here to
prove to you what we can do and bring to the table. But as time goes on, you will come to recognize us. The way you reach out to Ms. Maury and Eric and the other people, you will come to reach out to Colliers as an extension of your staff, bringing you market and market data and intelligence. Next. As was already been talked about, this is an extraordinary property, great access, great visibility. You know, our job here is to, assuming we are approved, take the input. We want to hear from commissioners, from staff, what the community, what you would like to ultimately see at this property, and then craft an invitation to negotiate that we will then go out with marketing materials and execute on your vision. But we are a full service company that will take everything through bringing the property out to market, identifying the prospective buyers, negotiating letters of intent with your city attorney, all the way through contract, all the way through referendum language, all the way through the closing. So that is our job. We are here with you for the duration. The next slide. Again, there's material in your packet, I'm sure, about the market, but this is a great time to be exposing this property to the market. This just gives you a little perspective. We track all of the specialty areas that I just mentioned before: office, industrial, retail. Just showed you the industrial and retail. You'll see there, vacancy rates below 5%. So it's a very opportune time to expose this property to the market that is still in rising tide capacity. Next. So a little bit about our sales and marketing strategy. As I mentioned before, not only do we bring commercial real estate expertise, but we are effectively a marketing machine. We've got a deep and wide marketing, so it's effectively like going out and hiring a Zimmerman or something like that, of a global marketing brand. Again, that's going to tell the story about why investors and businesses alike should be and need to be in Deerfield Beach. Next. Again, positioning this property, it's not just about sort of putting up a sign and taking phone calls. It is about positioning this property in context with the market, with the competition, with the various aspects, whether it's medical, whether it's office, whether it's industrial, whether it's retail. It is about positioning this property in the context of the market and driving home that point so that the bidders, the investors, the users understand how special of a property this is, obviously ultimately leading them to a higher price. But again, it's not just about putting out a sign or putting it on for the equivalent of a multiple listing service. Very specific, very targeted, very position-oriented marketing. Next. It's a full, sort of team approach. There's web, there's video photography, there's a custom website. The team that I showed you before are making phone calls to the various prospects. So it is we obviously produce hard copy brochures that are mailed out. So it is a fully comprehensive marketing campaign that addresses, social media to, people that literally get their information via their, postal service in the mailbox. Fully approached. Next. Timeline is important. I heard somebody talk about, urgency and speed. So we have the machine that can mobilize immediately. Our expectation is that we would be on the market, in the market, engaging with prospects right after the Labor Day holiday. So in a couple of weeks, again, assuming we're authorized, here this evening. So if we're starting in June, give or take, we think from a soup to nuts, including a referendum period, that, you know, that we would get this property closed, you know, in approximately a 40-week timetable. That's post referendum. You know, a couple of months of marketing, we would expect to be bringing back multiple offers, as we'll get into, I'm sure, when we talk about fees and so on and so forth. Our expectation is that we will generate in excess of a dozen offers, you know, on this property. So I know that we've spoken to a number of people, but I think there will be well over a dozen proposals for this property. We will vet those. That will be primarily over the summer into the early fall, and then we will bring back a recommendation to you in the early fall, so that you are able to give us direction and which way you want to go, and get the language approved so that we can, you know, bring it to the voters in the spring. Next talks about, you know, kind of, you know, what we do, and the fee. So again, all of the marketing that I talked about, creating a website, you know, video, social media, hard copy brochures, all of those are our expense. We operate in a success-based environment, so we don't get paid unless we are successful, and it's your choice to be, you know, the ultimate, you know, arbiter of success. It's your decision. We bring you the offers, we bring you the proposals, we create the invitation to negotiate based on what you would like to see on that site. It is a global. Colliers is a global firm. You know, we're in, you know, 68 countries around the world. We fully expect that we're going to be marketing this on a broad-based basis. We've got investors and users moving in, not just from the Northeast, but from California, from South America, from the Middle East, from all over the world. And we think that this is a kind of property that will attract a wide audience. So, like I said, it is a full soup to nuts engagement that we enter into with you. So we bring you these dozens, plural emphasis, of offers. And it's not just about, as I'm sure many of you are familiar, it's not just about price, but terms are critically important. Your counsel will tell you there are plenty of people who will offer a lot of money, but have got all kinds of contingencies and can tie up a property. And somebody talked about not wanting to sit here and seeing, you know, this thing sitting here so terms and contingencies and conditions are equally as important as price and as the use, and so on and so forth. So all of those factors are what are going to be brought out of this competitive process. So that will be something that we will again work through once we go through our marketing process. And then, like I said, once we get direction from you in terms of the use, the proposer, so on and so forth, then we work diligently with council and staff to work through all of the process of getting this thing to contract execution that you can bring to your citizens in the spring. So that is a quick overview. I know there were some questions if you wanted to be specific in some of those areas. I'm happy to address them, or I can just, somebody said, why do we pay, you know, a commission on people that have already, you know, expressed interest? As I've said before, as I said here, people expressing interest is one piece of this entire process. As I said, this is going to generate a lot of interest. The competition, once these people, the Malcolms and so on and so forth that have shown up, and the Roseburg, that we all know, once they see that we're engaged in this thing, they know to stand up straight, put on their best pair of shoes, sharpen their pencils, bring their A game, to the table, because they know that they're in for a competitive process. They know that we're marketing this on a worldwide basis. They know that there's good stiff competition out there. And so history has shown us that when you bring increased competition to a process like this, you do better on price, you do better on terms, you do better on use, you generally do better. Competition drives, the best outlooks and outputs in the market, and that's what we're gonna bring to the table here. So I don't know if that answers.
Thank you, sir. We have one question. Commissioner Drosky, do you have a follow-up to that?
Sure. So to continue that dialogue, so your benefit to me seems to be on the out of area market, that we could, the interest that we're getting is from the local folks. But if you're going to market, to the entire state, to the entire country, to the entire world, that, in my opinion, is where your benefit would come in. We can do it to the local folks, and it's the local folks who are in the hopper right now. So if you're going to market to Google and say, hey, make this your Southeast headquarters, or Amazon, or Ramada, if you want to do it for the hospitality industry, or or Blue Cross Blue Shield if you want to do medical. I'm just making up names as I go along. But if you have those contacts, those bigger organizations that we as the city don't, that's where I think the benefit comes in. So why would you be afraid of the carve out? And I don't mean this in a bad way, but why would you be hesitant to carve out the local folks that we already have in the hopper that have expressed that interest? I'm not looking to cut you out entirely, because you are going to provide a service. I think you should get some fee for the local folks if they get it, but not the same fee as if you were to bring a Google to the city.
Well, we're agnostic as to, who ultimately gets, the product, right? What our job is to do is to create this competition between Google and call it your local, developer, and drive that process so that, again, you're presented with the options and the outcomes that you desire, because ultimately it's your choice, right? I mean, Google could come in here and offer you $1, but that might be what you want to do versus the local guy that will pay you, X, but you might choose to go with the Google because, it's some of the other reasons. So we want to be your advisor, and we want to be your partner, and we don't want to necessarily be jaded on the outcome. So our process is to do this job for you in the best way possible, expose the property, expose the city to the Googles and the whatevers of the world, and have all of that information at your disposal so that you represent the citizens. You make the decision on what you want to do. Not ours. It's not ours. Our job is to give you a tremendous amount, make your job very difficult by giving you a lot of interesting and difficult options.
Okay, I understand. I'm going to keep pressing. So what would be the hesitancy to carve out the local folks? I mean, because you're providing, I don't want to talk for you, an additional service to vet those, to vet the local versus the Google bids.
To a certain degree, but I don't know the extent of conversations. If you told me you had a contract on a piece of property or something like that, sometimes we've done it where, the price is going to go up. I will almost guarantee you, because of the competition, and so there's value from that, from that perspective. And like I said, we don't want to be in a position where we're disincentivized because local, is getting, we want to drive the price so that you get, and if Malcolm or Rosemary or any of the guys that we deal with, all the time, we want to feel just as good about them getting the property as Google getting the property. We don't care. We're agnostic. again, it's your decision, not, not ours.
But how do you, can I keep going, Mayor? How do you, this position-oriented marketing, I mean, can you give me a little more detail onto what that is? Because you said it's more than just putting the sign out, in the yard, so to speak. I mean, so what differentiates you from everyone else? Why should we pick your service? What do you do above and beyond to recruit those Googles of the world? And I keep using that name, but that's
No, but it could be.
the first one that came to my mind, and I'm
Could be
sticking with it.
Baptist Health, or could be, a million other, types of companies. Once we determine
Yeah, pick your name.
whether it's, medical, or it's office, or it's flex, industrial, showroom, et cetera. These are the kind of companies, I mean, we're marketing thousands of properties, across the country. So we have access to data. We know what, I'm going to keep coming back to Google. We know what they're looking at. We know what, City Furniture is doing. We know what Baptist Health is doing. We know what all these companies are doing because we're marketing, on a broad scale to all of these companies. So once we determine that it's medical that we want to get, or we want to get a showroom kind of company, or we want to get a technology company, we know who they are, we know what they're doing, we know how to get to them. But more importantly, the marketing part is telling the story. And when I go to Google and they say Deerfield what, there's got to be a very compelling story about why they need to be in Deerfield Beach on the site and pay, whatever, price we're gonna drive them. So the marketing, it's not only knowing who they are, but it's also knowing how to get to them, knowing how to get to them with a compelling story, and knowing what method of kind of getting to them, whether it's on social, whether it's, flyers in the mail, whether it's, et cetera. But we know how to get to those people, we know how to target those people, and we know how to make an effective case to those people about why they need to be.
I mean, but how do you know how to get to all of those individual groups? Let's say, for example, this is going to be a long question, but let's say, for example, I decide I want a corporate headquarters there, and I'll use the Google example. My colleague, and I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth, I'm just using examples here. Commissioner Parnas wants to see medical. So that would be a different focus group that should be on. The mayor would like to see hospitality there. Vice mayor would like to see retail. Those are vastly different groups with vastly different, corporate players within those groups. That's a lot of different fields. Are you saying that your company has the expertise and the connections and the database to go to all of those
Absolutely.
currently?
Yep. If you wanted a data center, if you wanted a golf course, if you wanted a marina. But yes, I mean, so we've got specialty practice groups in each one of those, areas that are dealing with the Marriotts and the Googles and the, and the insurance companies, the Baptist Healths, and you name it. And so we take that direction, and you might want to go in 5 different directions. If you do, that's fine. We'll go out to those 5 different audiences, and we'll bring you back interest from all of those, various constituencies. And then, like I said, then it's going to be your decision to make. Because you guys will have to fight out whether you want a hotel or, or a Google. We are agnostic from that perspective. So that's why I think, the whole perspective about carve outs and so on and so forth doesn't make sense. We want to do our job for you by bringing you as many options as you see fit, and then putting the decision in your, in your hands.
So how many people do you have that work for your firm that can address all these different areas?
So, in South Florida alone, we have 150 brokerage professionals that are specialists in retail, office, industrial, and so on and so forth. That doesn't, there's 16,000 employees at Colliers that do a variety of different aspects. So if we know specifically, somebody said, tech, we've got a huge presence out in, the Bay Area. We're working on a number of large tech, relocations into South Florida. We tap into that, into that process that's already underway, and make sure that, this site gets the exposure that it needs to the audience in the Bay Area or in Boston or, wherever a lot of these tech companies are. So that's after we get the direction from you. it's hospitality, it's tech, it's, flex. After we get that direction, then we unleash the market.
One more question, sorry, guys. So are these folks that are in-house with you with Colliers, or is this like
In-house, all in-house,
folks that you, like, reach out to other firms or other brokerage companies?
all in-house, all in-house. And that was another, I was gonna bring this up, but, with regards to the fee, so invariably, sometimes, some of these other, prospects that we reach out to, can be or would be represented, by another firm. And so that's part of the fee that we would use to, to compensate them. So.
Commissioner Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel as though it's, staff must have the ability to market this somewhat themselves. I would have rather them try whatever, techniques that they have to try to promote this, because my colleagues started off by saying that they had got, this person had gotten calls, I'm sure staff have gotten calls. So to a certain extent, this property will market itself because it's prime. It's going to market itself to a certain extent. And I'm sure you bring some sophisticated marketing techniques, but I don't really know what it is that you do so good that we have to have you. That property is prime. That property, like I said, it's going to market itself in so many ways. And I would rather the staff had launched somewhat of a campaign, whatever is available to them, whatever techniques are available as far as this is concerned, to say, we went this far, and this is as far as we could go. And at that point, we could have to say, you know what, we need some additional help with this, but I don't see what it is that you're going to do that's going to make the biggest difference.
I hear what you're saying. I respect the perspective of it is a strong market, but marketing itself is not, in our vernacular. There is no such thing as marketing itself. Again, there are plenty of people outside of this area who have never heard of Deerfield Beach. They should, but they haven't. And there's case after case after case. These are South Florida historically is a very tough, they call it a barrier to entry market. There are a lot of people all over the world that would like to invest in South Florida, don't know how, don't know where, don't know why, don't know when. But that's what we do by this global marketing. We bring these opportunities to people that are trying to get into this market, but don't know where or how or why and when, to get into that. Those are the kind of people who've got, completely different perspectives. They're used to investing in Boston or in the Silicon Valley or New York City, and they are going to, drive the pricing and the activity on sites like this. Again, to your point, it is a good market and it is a good site. That's why we're here, and that's why we're excited to work with you. But there is a huge audience out there that is not going to find this site on their own.
I understand that, but what I'm saying, the city had taken the initiative to introduce this piece of property on a much larger scale. They did it themselves. It's a large scale. That interest is going to come because you yourself said it's prime property. So if the city had introduced it and put it out there, a lot of the people that probably you are going to deal with would be interested as well.
It's very different. I mean, again, them knowing how to go reach, the 50, technology companies that are based in the Bay Area. That's not their, I mean, could they search online and try and find it? Possibly. We know how to get to those people. We know what they're doing. We know what activities they're they're already undertaking. We know that for half of those companies, this site's gonna be too small and they're not even gonna pay attention to it, so we don't waste our time, going to those companies, and we focus on the companies that can build a, 50 or 100,000. Some companies aren't coming into this market unless they can build a 250,000 square foot campus. Well, guess what? This site won't work for them. So you're not wasting a lot of time chasing, the dream, catchers out there. You're going to companies that or prospects that that a site like this, an area like this, market like this, works for them. And again, no disrespect to the staff, but that's what we do every single day. Our 16,000 brokers around, that's all they do. All that data is at our disposal for us to go.
I just believe that our staff have more creativity than just trying to overdo it. I think if they had said that we've looked at this and we've tried, if there was a plan coming from staff, and they say that we're unable to execute this plan, then that's a whole different ballgame.
If I went back to one of those screens and I showed you we're probably working in 24 municipalities around the state as we speak. Case after case after case of properties that they put out their RFPs. They went out, they're smart people, good people, and so on and so forth. And for whatever reason, same old people, local people that, were sort of used to playing the game. For instance, right now in Port St. Lucie, they have a piece of property. They had it appraised for $800,000. The staff had been marketing it, put out 3 RFPs, got the same local people. Never really, got anywhere. We went out to the market, got a flower company that's moving up from Miami that's paying $1.2 million. So it's just.
I'm gonna pause you, sir. I'm gonna interject, kind of give my perspective on this, because it's putting you on the spot. To kind of justify
I don't mind.
I know you don't, but I do. So I'm gonna pause you for a moment. Since I get to run the meeting, I get to do that, so it's fun. I'll give you I was with you guys on this completely. I agree with Commissioner Drosky and Commissioner Preston's concern about this, and because why would we do this? Because it didn't seem like, we knew there was interest from people that come forward. So why? It was like the same questions you guys are asking. Here's the best way I can surmise it, and because I feel like we're kind of talking in circles a little bit from what you're saying. While we have a very creative staff, I agree with you on that. None of them, this isn't their forte. This isn't what they do. And we do this so rarely, because so it's not that our staff isn't skilled enough to do it. It's not what they do all the time. This is very rare that we have this opportunity to do this, because I looked at it and said, why are we going to spend this money? It doesn't make a lot of sense. And the city manager and I talked about it, and one of the great points he made, and I'll give him credit for this, is that this is like you selling, like if it's for sale by owner, or going out and hiring a realtor to do it. Now, we have people that have come forward and says, hey, we have this opportunity here. We're interested, but we don't have anything concrete from them. Right now, it's a lot of talk. It's a lot of great talk. It's a lot of talk. So we have the opportunity to have a professional company like Colliers. This is not a small company. This is a major company that will go out and market this in areas that we probably never would have created to be able to market this towards. Is it a hot market? Absolutely. Absolutely. Is it a fantastic location? Absolutely, 100%. That alone shouldn't short ourselves in going out and trying to be the best candidate out there for this to get as much bang for our buck. As you just described what happened in Port St. Lucie, marketing something for 800,000 and really kind of spinning and win, not really getting anywhere, to go out and find someone else to do that. That seems to be what we would be hiring for, is to be able to do that. We don't do this very often. It's a unique opportunity. I would much rather us put a really professional effort forward to it. as opposed to relying on kind of doing it in-house. I think it's deserving enough of having an expert in this field do it right for us. It takes pressure off of staff, who, like I said, they don't do this every day. I know when, I sold my house, my neighbors were like, oh, I know somebody would be interested. Gosh, I'll sell it my owner. That sounds exciting. In the end, I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. I thought it'd be better if I went out and got a realtor to do it. And that's just, in my opinion, is what we're doing here. I understand a carve out for saying, well, we have local people come in. Think about that. Put yourself in their position. If they have to rank a pile of 10 people to make a recommendation, and knowing that 3 of them are going to get a lesser cut on those 3, I don't know if it's going to be a fair shake across the board. They're going to do the same professional job, whether they're local or whether they're on the far reaches of this country. So I think the city manager, right before this meeting, convinced me of this. I was right there with you guys on this for sure and sharing the same opinion. But I think that, looking at it from that perspective, I totally changed my mind. I think we should move forward with this. So I have Commissioner Hudak and then yourself. I stopped. Did you have anything else, Commissioner Preston? Okay. I'm sorry, Commissioner Hudak and then Commissioner Barnes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'm so glad you brought up those points, because what I enjoy about being on this dais is we all look at things differently. We all don't have the exact same opinion on things. But at the end of the day, we look at what's best for the city. And when I look at this, this is a time to be bold, to quote my fellow commissioner. This is an opportunity for us to do it right. And that's right. You can go drive down the street and see one of those signs that says, I buy ugly homes, and sell your home to them. Or you can go out and get a real estate agent and find out what your home is really worth. And you're not going to be dealing with just the local community. This is an opportunity for us to branch out and do it the right way, to be bold and to find the property that's going to be the best fit for this community, whether it is in Deerfield Beach or whether it's in, Cupertino, wherever it may be. You need a professional organization that can go out and can market not only Deerfield Beach, which is something we've always talked about, but also the property and the positives of this property, because it is prime real estate. And this is our opportunity to make sure that this is done right. Yes, we do have a great staff, but this isn't their expertise. We've talked before about our staff shouldn't be running a cemetery. That's not their expertise. So we've got to let the experts do what they do best for our city. And I think this is the right opportunity to move in that direction. So, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner Parnas.
Yes, in discussion with some of the local builders, they said, gee, if you go to a broker, that'll drive the price up and maybe take us out of the market. I have to look at the whole city. If the price goes up, we do better. Instead of getting $1 million for the property, if we got $1.5 million, because Google wants it and they're willing to pay for it, the city benefits. And I think broadening the market and adding competition will drive the price up, just like anything else. It's prime land. Land is scarce in Broward County, very scarce. I look at this as an opportunity to have professionals get us the best price going. And I'm sure the mayor and the staff has gone over your fees and have found them at least reasonable. Am I correct, Bill?
I would imagine, I won't say that, but I will say that staff obviously is making this recommendation.
Okay, I realize that the staff itself is making this recommendation.
Yes.
And I'm saying to myself, if they could handle it, why would they recommend us going outside?
Right.
I'm thinking about that and I'm saying, if it'll drive the price up because there's more competition. As much as I love some of the builders that have supported the city over the years, I have to look at what's best for the city. And what's best for the city is the best price we can get for the land. And we can decide what's going on. We don't like a project, we don't have to say yes. When they make their proposal, that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna vet the buyers and present to us what they wanna do with the land, not only buy it, but what they're gonna do with it. And the decision is ours. And I think it's the right thing to do.
Quite frankly, just to piggyback on that before I turn it over to Commissioner Hudak, Commissioner Preston Hudak, Vice Mayor Hudak. If FARDA and FAU had done this years ago, we might have had something in there decades ago. It hasn't happened. So, Commissioner Preston and Vice Mayor Hudak.
One question. My colleague used an analogy. He said, when you were buying a house, or you were selling your house. And, the company said, we buy other homes. He says, you have to make a decision, you want a professional real estate. But what happens if you get professional real estate and say, you do better with people buy other homes? I'm just kidding. I was just kidding. My point is that, is that we are charged with looking at these sort of things because, we're spending money. We're spending money. And I just want to make sure that, that the money is well spent. I still agree with my colleague. His concerns are valid. But, Mayor, what you're saying about how this should be approached in this situation, maybe it is the best thing to allow this to go forward.
Vice Mayor.
I just want to point out another thing. It's not always about price either, as the gentleman talked about a little earlier. It's also about contract, and they're experts in those contracts as well. You can sell your house to Charlie for $1 million or Sally for $950,000. But if Sally's going to take 10 years to pay it off, this guy's going to be a cash buyer, you've got to look out what's best for you. And those are extreme examples, but they're the detail is in the details. The diligence is in the details, and sometimes those contracts, we're not real estate brokers, we're not real estate attorneys, and what happens in those contracts is just as important, if not more important, than the bottom line dollar. And having a company that does this for a living is also going to protect the company, the city, from making a mistake on that aspect of just looking at the dollars. Because there's a lot that goes into it when it's just not just the dollars.
Being you prove you only want.
I will accept that, see another life.
Okay.
But I will.
I will take this motion.
I'll make a motion.
Vice Mayor Hudak.
Mayor,
Commissioner Drosky.
You have.
I will in a moment.
Okay.
Commissioner Drosky, before I turn it over to the city manager who's asking. to speak.
I'll let the city manager go
Okay.
first, like here we have to
City
say.
manager.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just to, not to belabor this, but another piece that I would definitely have trouble deciphering is where you would determine that carve out, because this commission has seen anything from proposals come to it through a formal action that was denied, all the way to what Commissioner Parnes has spoke about of people just calling and saying they have interest. I don't know where you necessarily draw the line on that. Also, I want to. One of the points that was made was, what do you want? And there'll be a time and a place for that discussion, whether or not this item passes. But I think, from my perspective and my recommendation, my input to the commission would be that we look at what we don't want more than what we do want, because I don't think we really necessarily know what this property will bring to us in terms of various industries and markets. But I certainly think we would be better to describe what we would not want there. For instance, the gas station, a McDonald's, those types of uses. Additionally, there is something that was brought up and not necessarily very distinctly. Of course, it really wasn't his place to say, it's more mine. Talk about the timeline here, because that's something that I would really like some direction on from the commission, because as you saw in the timeline, if moving today, we can move this to the springtime for the referendum. And that would mean the March 2023 election. And, this item is before you at this speed because the city commission took bold action. And myself and staff, we want to make sure that we follow through on this project for the city commission. And this is as quickly as we'll be able to move, which is that March 2023 election. There are some pros and cons to that. But the next available date or time frame in which we could probably bring this before the voters for referendum would be late 2024. So there are some pros and cons to that as well, because you're talking about in 2023, a municipal election that currently has only 2 districts on it, which we would have to open it up, as opposed to waiting until 2024 when you're dealing with the national election. So that's something that I would like to get some direction on to make sure that the city commission understands what I just presented, and then make sure that we have solid direction on how you would like us to move forward if this item is approved, the timeline of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would care to comment on this item? Not seeing any, I'll close it to the public. Commissioner Hudak, or excuse me, Vice Mayor, I apologize, Vice Mayor. You have a motion on the floor looking for a second. Will that include some direction as far as the timeline that you just talked about?
I think it's vitally important that we move this as expeditiously as we can.
Okay. Commissioner Grassi.
I agree on the timeline. I guess I would ask the city manager if him or staff have tentatively approached the supervisor of elections to the cost of the March 2023 election, where we would have to, March 2023 is only districts 1 and 2, so districts 3 and 4 would have to be opened up as well. So basically a full city election versus, then you said the next opportunity would not be until November, or maybe August or November 2024. Is there any been preliminary discussions with the SOE as to?
We had that about the other item, and I believe it was $134,000 to open up the whole city.
Well, I'm asking specifically for this item.
Commissioner Barnett is correct. Add an additional item onto that about it. That's the approximate cost that it would be. Of course, language and the amount of words that will be on that ballot will be a determining factor in final costs. And I do see the assistant city clerk shaking her head for me, which is very helpful. Thank you. So that would be the approximate cost to put that on the ballot. One of the things and that we may be able to do is some cost recovery on that with the successful proposer. I'm not sure if that's something that could be negotiated, but I see the consultant nodding his head for me, so that's helpful as well.
Okay.
So my comment was, I started tonight by saying I want to have a dialogue, not that I was for or against this, because quite frankly, I could have gone either way coming into this tonight. But I'm going to go with Vice Mayor Hudak, because he's quoting my words when he says "be bold," because that's exactly what I said, on this project before. And I'm counting on Mr. Krasnow's team going beyond the local offers that we have to the bigger markets that are out there. If that's the case, then my concerns about a carve out basically become moot at that point, because he would have brought us a deal that we just can't say no to. And that serves what I'm counting on your firm doing and bringing to us to evaluate in the future. So I'm willing to, I took a risk in saying no to the previous deal. And going forward with something that was better, and this is the opportunity. I think we have to find that better. So I'm going to fall in line with the rest of my colleagues.
Thank you. So that's a second?
It is.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. We have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas.
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hudak,
Yes.
Mayor Diaz.
Yes. Full forward. Thank
We're
you.
we're very excited and we are going to bring you some very bold, intimidating proposals. We're very excited.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. Before we, if the commission would indulge me for a moment, not with you, sir, on something, another matter. Just because I'm looking at the hour, it's now 11:08, and there is a young lady out there, a little girl who is watching. It's probably close to her bedtime, if not past her bedtime. So Mackenzie, we know you're a big Paw Patrol fan. I know Mayor Humdinger doesn't like puppies, but Mayor Gans likes puppies and he likes kittens as well. So I just want to let you know, and your dad's doing a great job for us, and it's time for you to go to bed. She's 35 years old, though. Mr. Soroka.
You ready for the next item, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next item is item number 12, resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving a sign relocation and reconstruction agreement with Clear Channel Outdoor LLC pursuant to the city's billboard relocation policy and section 70.20 Florida statutes, authorizing execution of the sign relocation agreement, providing for an effective date. You'll note on this item a suggested action. The applicant has requested deferral of this item to the June 21st, 2022 commission meeting, but it was publicly noticed, which is why it's still on your agenda. So the commission may want to do a motion to defer the item to the June 21st, 2022 commission.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do I need to open to the public?
Yes, Mayor.
Is anyone from the public who would care to comment on this item? Not seeing any, I'll close it to the public. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
The next item is item number 13, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving an amendment to the Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant Agreement with the Florida Division of Emergency Management to reinstate and extend the agreement, authorizing execution of the amendment and providing for an effective date.
Is there anyone from the public who would care to comment on this item? Not seeing any, I'm going to close it to the public.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion from the vice mayor. We have a second by Commissioner Finesse. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, is that a roll call or is that,
I believe we're just extending the date on this, and there's no additional funds being allocated.
my apologies. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Item number 14 is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, adopting an amendment to the city budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022, approving a $10 million supplemental appropriation and budget transfer to the general fund to be reserved for indirect ARPA-funded projects, and a budget adjustment to the Utilities, Water, and Sewer Renewal Fund to modify the $2.8 million direct ARPA funding for the chlorine conversion project to indirect ARPA funding as set forth in the attached Exhibit A, providing for conflict, severability, and an effective date. This is first reading.
City manager.
Thank you. I have a presentation from our consultants, GSG, to present this evening for actually really both items 14 and 15, and I know that the city attorney will need to read into the record item number 15 separately. But at a very high level, this budget amendment effectuates a change in the ARP plan, as we have discussed individually with each commissioner. And so we're going to go into the details about what the ARP program allows and how that affects our ability to execute the projects in a little bit more of an expedient way, in my opinion. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over.
Would you want me to read the title? So item number 15?
If you'd like.
You're presenting for item number 15, so I'm going to go ahead and read that title into the record. Of course, it will need separate votes. Item number 15 is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving the amended list of city projects to be funded with or with funds made available by American Rescue Plan Act funds, authorizing execution of the amendment and providing for an effective date.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Joseph Sheets. I'm Senior Project Manager with Government Services Group. Pleasure to be before you all tonight, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you all for having me. So as Mr. Santucci alluded to, so we're going to go over the proposed projects. There's been some changes in the American Rescue Plan guidance. With that, it allows the city for some more flexibility and can provide some cost savings and time savings down the road. So we will go over what that entails, talk about the direct funding projects indirectly funded by the American Rescue Plan, and we'll wrap up and answer any questions. Next slide, please. So as we know, the American Rescue Plan, very significant $1.9 trillion economic stimulus bill. As we've been working with the city of Deerfield Beach for, almost a year now, the commission approved a very robust plan that captures many of the pillars of the American Rescue Plan for infrastructure, lost public sector revenue, addressing the economic impacts in the community, and public health expenditures, which are the four main pillars of the Revive, Recover, and Renew plan for the city of Deerfield Beach. Next slide, please. So the main update that came with the final ruling from Treasury, which was released on January 7th, was an update to the revenue loss expenditure category. This expenditure category provides the most flexibility and advantage to local governments because within that expenditure category, it allows cities to spend it on the provision of government services, essentially the most broad category of expenditures for cities and counties and territories to really address their specific needs. Previously, there was a very complex calculation that cities had to undertake, but there was really a lack of consistency applied across the board that the Treasury was seeing. So when they saw that inconsistency and both their guidance and the application of it, they said, okay, instead of doing that calculation, all cities and counties can now claim a standard allocation of $10 million of revenue loss funding as opposed to their calculation. Think about it like your taxes. Instead of doing an itemized deduction, now cities can just take a standard deduction. Again, for many, this was a huge, huge boon for them because most of these cities and counties are getting, a lot of them are getting less than $10 million. So for those, it allowed them to use their total allocation. For cities like Deerfield Beach, it still provides a huge advantage because as opposed to the 6.2 or 3 million that we had initially identified using the calculation, we can now spend $10 million of that $16 million allocation on revenue loss expenditures. So with that updated guidance, it allows us to be a little bit more creative in how we can spend it and how the funds can flow through and have a greater impact on the city. Next slide, please. So the eligible categories for this expenditure category were many capital expenditures, general infrastructure and health services, general government administration, as well as provision of fire, police, and other public safety services. So what we identified was that in the initial plan that was created by the city staff and with the commission's approval, there's about $10 million worth of projects that instead of being funded by direct American Rescue Plan expenditures can be offset by a singular line item expenditure and now be funded through general fund expenditures. So as we look at the spending plan in general, instead of that $10 million worth of projects, that $10 million of direct ARPA funding will go towards the yearly BSO contract obligations. Now, the overall spending plan as a whole is not changing in terms of the projects that will be completed as a result of the city receiving its American Rescue Plan funds. Next slide, please. So as we see, we have on the left our entirety of the American Rescue Plan allocation. We have our direct ARPA projects in yellow, which are the $6.28 million, and the $10 million, which will be spent on the BSO contract. What that does is frees up $10 million within the general fund of money that would normally be going toward that BSO contract. And then we can administer that $10 million worth of formerly direct ARPA projects through general fund money. Well, what's the advantage of that? Next slide, please. The advantages are numerous. So one, anytime you put the federal red tape on these projects, it increases the cost of them because the bids automatically go up when you have that language from the uniform guidance or the federal standards called 2 CFR 200. It also increases the project timelines. So utilizing this maneuver, we can shorten the project timelines. We can decrease the cost of them, as well as on these $10 million worth of projects, instead of reporting on 10 million, instead of reporting on 10 different projects for the next 5 years on a quarterly basis, we're now going to report on one project over the next 5 years for a quarterly basis for that $10 million chunk. And that's the BSO contract expenditure. So really now those projects are beholden to city and state policies, which the city of Deerfield Beach has great experience with, administering those projects through their own policies and procedures, obviously. So it allows for timeliness and a cost-effective way to administer these projects. So there's a budgetary maneuver, budgetary mechanism, which is the previous item, an ordinance that has to be undertaken in order to make use of this maneuver. Sorry, next slide, please. As well as just the overall project list in general. As we mentioned, the projects that the commission had helped identify and previously approved, the projects are all remaining the same. What's changing is where are they coming from? So these are our direct ARPA projects. This is $17.4 million worth of projects that were previously identified as potential ARPA projects by the commission. So this list has not changed with the exception of a $10 million line item for the Broward Sheriff's Office contract. And on the next slide, we will see the indirect ARPA projects. These are the projects that within that $10 million from the general fund, not from a federal grant source, will be administered through city, local, and state policies. Many of these projects had already undergone with procurement, with other costs that have already been associated with it, and being able to move forward without having to go and re-procure or add federal language to those existing projects, again, will save the city time and money. So as of now, we have about $9.4 million of that identified, with about $500,000 what we call unmet needs, allowing for any potential budgetary variances that may occur within those projects. Next slide, please. As we know, when we initially identified the list of projects, we presented a list that was a couple of $1 million more than what was allocated. And this was to allow for flexibility when projects either were reprioritized due to other potential funding sources available, or just other projects being a greater need, or not being ready to execute at the same level. But these were the ones that are prioritized as of now. But that's not to say that they couldn't come back to the list for original funding. Next slide, please. So it's something that seems like a somewhat complex maneuver. And again, when you're navigating federal requirements for grant programs, sometimes it can be, but it's really just an act of displacing that $10 million in order to better utilize the funds and take those projects that we knew would have an impact on the city and on the residents as a whole, and be able to engage in those projects in a way that better benefits the city. So we'll open it up to any questions or comments at this point.
City manager, any other comments?
I think the presentation summed it up very well, and again, look forward to continuing moving these projects forward just in a little bit more of an expeditious way.
Okay, so anyone from the public, we care to comment on this item? Not seeing any, I'm going to close it to the public. Commission.
Motion approved.
Second.
That's item number 14, correct? The budget amendment first.
So we have a vice mayor's made a motion, seconded by Commissioner Parnas. We have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
Mayor Dan.
Yes.
Okay, and you're now on item number 15, which is the approving the amended list of city projects to be funded with the ARPA funds.
Any other comments? Okay,
Yes, sir.
Commission? Looking for, anyone from the public here to comment on this item? I'll close it to the public. Okay, we have a motion from the vice mayor,
Second,
second by Commissioner Parnas. Roll call, please.
Mr. Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
Mayor Dan.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are now at comments by administration and legal. I have no comments tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Commission. I just have two brief presentations for you this evening that I thought were you should see as well as the public. And the first one will be the presentation of a new summer program that we have coming up in it. Not only so you understand some of the efforts that Ms. Bernard and her team are doing, but also gives us an opportunity to promote the program as it will be the first year.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. And I know it's late, but this is really, I think, a huge step for us in focusing on how to program for our teens, our middle school and high school kids throughout the summer, and not just provide camp. So our mission statement is Parks and Recreation is committed to maximizing our resources, engaging the community for safe, attractive, well-maintained parks and equitable and inclusive programs to help strengthen the community and improve the quality of life. And that inclusive part is really important. So we always think of perhaps persons with disabilities, perhaps across socioeconomic lines, but it also happens throughout the age spectrum. And teens are a group that are hard to program, but the value of the programming, if it's successful, has great benefit. So, Deputy Lovett, did you come in? Are you fine there, or do you want to? Oh, she's good. Okay. All right. So I'll run through a few things that are important. First is the National Parks and Recreation Association has 3 pillars: health and wellness, conservation, and social equity. We think we hit on all of those pillars with these activities. I cannot thank my staff enough. As you know, finding summer help is very, very difficult. I kicked this idea off to them a couple of months ago, and they fully embraced it. Our partners at BSO and CAL immediately asked to be involved and are going to help us with this process this summer. So pretty excited about what we're getting to do. So what are we doing? We're going to provide programming for middle school and high schoolers. Some programs will be middle school and high school together. Most will be separate. Middle school at one time, high school on another. We will take a pre and post survey to evaluate the effectiveness of the program. One of the things, a sample question might be, what interests you most about this program? The incentives, the opportunity to make friends, or summers are too boring? So we'll ask that at the beginning, ask it at the end, and see if we had any impact on their opinion. Physical activity is very critical. We're going to go over just a handful of statistics here in a minute. Incentives are really important. Research shows that it helps when there's some skin in the game, so to speak, and the kids have an opportunity to earn what will be, in this case, gift cards and technology equipment. It's hopefully a start of a year-round engagement. We have an awesome teen center, and I know the Boys and Girls Club's opening a center tomorrow night. The middle school group, sometimes we hit them and sometimes we don't. We're hoping to get them all engaged, and most importantly, from a very selfish perspective, we'd like to get more teams involved in our programs so that next summer, when we're looking to hire summer staff, we'll have some that have come through our system. We'll offer food and beverages at all of these programs. And like I said, the goal is to get them engaged and hopefully lead them into not just good leadership, but an opportunity to work with us this summer going. So statistics, 64% of teens are not getting 60 minutes a day recommended activity. 92% agree that they have met a good friend in out of school time programs. That's what the OST is. And 77% of kids are more likely to get in trouble. And this is, they self-identified as this, more likely to get in trouble when they're bored or have nothing to do. I forgot to tell you the awesome name our team came up with for this program is Teen Adventures All Summer Are TAS. So the activities will include flag football, volleyball, basketball, archery, kayaking, like sports categories. There'll be entertainment categories, and then educational categories. So sports activities are often offered more often. They get 10 points for each time they participate. Entertainment's less often 20, and the educational, those are 50-point activities to try and encourage doing the educational stuff along with the fun stuff. So, like I say, VSO jumped right on board and has been awesome to work with. We got a lot of good ideas from them. They're going to participate most of the summer, and then we have a calendar of events. So there is a poster, a flyer of a poster over on the board if anybody wants to grab those. You can go to DFB City to sign up. All these programs are free. We do ask for registration just so we have a better idea of attendance and how much food or drink we want to make sure we have. It kicks off June 9th with a family food truck night at Pioneer Park. That's the last day of school, as I understand it. And then it goes pretty much every day all summer until about a week before the kids go back to school. So any questions? Be happy to answer.
Commissioner. Excellent. Thank you so much.
I have one quick question, Mayor.
Yes, go right ahead.
Sorry, Terry. Not directly related, somewhat perhaps, but I know the previous director was, and I may not be using your terminology, to get the parks program like certified or some type of certification process that would lead to like more funding, grant funding and opportunities. For A, do you even know what I'm talking about? And B, are you carrying that towards or going in a different direction?
It's accreditation. It's accreditation through our academy. I'm a member of the academy. The accreditation process in itself is very valuable, but incredibly time consuming. I've been through it twice as a startup, and I've been through one renewal. In Kansas City, we have been accredited for 24 years now. It's a lot of work for a little bit of bang, and that, as a member of the academy, I probably should admit that, but there aren't a lot of grants that require that anymore. At the very beginning, 25 years ago, there weren't a lot of agencies that were accredited, and so people just assumed if you were accredited, you were a better running organization. It's a great process if you have the time and energy to put into it, but there's 137 standards, and I think you have to pass 134 of them to get it. And that's policy after policy after policy. Maybe in a year or two, it might be something for us to look at, but I think we got some more low-hanging fruit to deal with right now.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it.
Thank you. In the next presentation, I'd like to bring up Mr. Grimlow to just provide, he's been with the city for approximately 6 months now, and I'd like to provide the city commission with just an update of some of the things that he's been working on.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, I know is here, commissioners and residents. I wanted to give briefly just a sort of the 30,000-foot overview of what we've been doing over the last 5 months. We've been working a lot with different policies. A lot of the beginning was analyzing where we are and then trying to slowly implement some changes that we can incrementally change some of the things in the direction of in the various departments around the public safety. So I'm just going to go through some of them and highlight them. If you go to the next slide. I'll start with code enforcement. Essentially, these are the three areas that we've been working at: increasing customer service, fiduciary responsibility, and enhancing the safety, beauty, and compliance. In the realm of customer service, we're encouraging our folks to use the website and check there for status updates. We're heavily emphasizing resolving these cases before they go to magistrate. We haven't been doing a stellar job at that, but we're working hard to continue to do that and work with residents. And also to reduce continuances, as many of you know, what has plagued us in the past has been these 90-day continuances, another 90 days, and it's very frustrating for the complainants, and it takes a long time to get compliance. We have moved those now to 30 days. We're using standard 30 days, and then there has to be some exception if we're going to go beyond 30 days. As far as the fiduciary responsibility, you just recently approved the enhanced violation fines for these nuisance violators, these repeat nuisance violators. Those we're starting to use now. The more serious cases, instead of putting those off and having it to where someone comes back in 30 days to re-talk about their case to magistrate, we're asking for findings of fact up front. In other words, having like the trial up front, having a finding of fact so that the fines begin immediately. If they come back in 30 days to give a sad story, they've already accumulated 30 days worth of fines. So there'll be an incentive for them to take care of that. If they come back before that time frame and they have resolved the issue, everything goes away. It's resolved, there's no penalty. For obstinate violators, we are doing the property liens. We're doing a partial cost offset with our magistrate hearings, several $1,000s for us to bring a case to magistrate. If it goes to mitigation, it's several $1,000s more. The city has not been recouping any of those costs in the past, so we are recouping those costs some of those costs presently. On life safety violations that we find, we're doing immediate abatement instead of giving time on those. And on mitigations, those are those times when magistrate has had the finding, they've been fined, and now they want to come back and plead a case to lower that number. There's a variety of those cases. Probably one of the worst extremes I saw was a woman in her 90s who had over $200,000 in fines. It's absolutely ridiculous. Those we need to handle and get those off of our books. But then there are also businesses and other repeat violators that try to take advantage of the mitigation process. Now anything that's over $50,000 is my approval. So the city has a voice in those mitigations from this point. In terms of enhancing the safety, as you know, we are doing the 40 and 50-year inspections. That's a huge workload increase on code, but we are doing those. We're moving through those as quickly as we can. There are hurdles and bumps along the way. A lot of that has to do with stuff that's out of our control. It deals with property appraiser issues and other things, but we're trying to keep a good tempo there. We also are using task force mentality, as you saw with Praxis, and we're getting a little bit better responses when we're using this task force approach, where all of the departments under public safety work together to get compliance from our offenders. And we're also starting code sweeps, which is neighborhood level or street level, where we know that there is an ongoing problem in a particular area, and we want code to go out with law enforcement or fire rescue support and address those issues. The next slide. Under emergency management, we just brought on emergency management supervisor in March. He's been working diligently. He's just came back from the state hurricane conference, in fact, doing equipment upgrades, getting our EOC ready. We had some upgrades that we needed to do. We had equipment that wasn't working, that's been replaced. We're addressing some functional issues with the space and the operational area that we've been working in the past. That is being addressed. And we have, after all the consulting work that had been started prior to my arrival, we have great checklists and SOPs now in place for each of the functions that we have in the EOC. Staff has been trained. We've already had at least 75 of our management staff trained. Those are the folks that work in the EOC. They've been through one training already. The EOC is functional today, and we're going to continue with more drills throughout the year. We have some tabletop exercises coming. We have policy reviews that are still in place that are going to continue to ensure that our new hires get the training that they need for the EOC. Go to the next one, please. For park rangers, we've had quite a challenge on the staffing issues with park rangers and beach ambassadors. We had 3 park rangers. It went down to 2. We had 1 out for an extended period of time, so we were left with 1 park ranger. Getting the lead park ranger on board has been a bit of a challenge, but it looks like we will have someone on board by the end of the month. That person will also be selecting the beach ambassadors. We've tried to get beach ambassadors on board a couple of times using our staffing agencies. It's a high priority for us. It's something that we want to get done. We wanted this done sooner than this even, but we were not able to get suitable applicants from any of our staffing agencies. That's been a great disappointment, but it'll remain a high priority. And as soon as our park ranger lead is on board, he or she'll be selecting the other park rangers as well as the beach ambassadors and getting that taken care of as soon as possible. The operational considerations with beach ambassadors, right now they're housed at CCC. We're moving them out of that area so they're in a more visible location, they're more accessible to the public, and we're using more electronic means for them to communicate so that they're not having to be stuck in an office environment. They should be out in the parks. Next one, please. For the contracts for Broward Sheriff's Office, we have received and I reviewed the considerations that came from Broward Sheriff's Office. We just got those at the beginning of May for fiscal year 23. My goal is really to ensure that the costs are fair, that they're reasonable, that they're appropriate, that they're consistent with the contractual language, but that they're also consistent with our other municipalities and other entities that are served by the Broward Sheriff's Office in the county. So we have been examining them. I've been in contact with my counterparts in other cities that are served by the Broward Sheriff's Office, as well as their city staff, to discuss these issues and to have a more of a coordinated and consistent way of dealing with some of the questions that we have. I have already sent back some questions to the Sheriff's Office on some of these budgetary issues that I would like answers to as we move through our budgetary process this year as well. With regard to the police and fire stations, we've all heard various things at different stations. We know that there are some issues. We continue to try to address those. We are planning for some upgrades, and we need to keep our minds focused on the future generations. We're looking at buildings that are generations old right now. Certainly, those folks that plan for those buildings did not anticipate where we are today with 86,000 residents, and certainly they're not anticipating where we're going to be 30 to 40 years from now. So we are working on developing that master plan with the space analysis and needs assessment, also the scope of services that need to take place. Currently, in the interim, while we're doing these other works, we have done some structural upgrades. For example, Station 75. We've done some life safety upgrades at Station 66. We replaced Station 111. It's a new trailer. That's not the ideal situation, but at least to have a new facility there. And we should be having a grand opening of Station 51. That's the one out in Valeros. That grand opening should be within the next couple of weeks. Next slide. Regarding parking enforcement, we've been doing quite a bit in examining some of the issues that have been in parking enforcement. There are a lot of moving parts in parking enforcement. We've been moving, of course, as you know, toward mobile payments. That has gone from around 2% of our revenue to 24% of our revenue. At the same time, eliminating coins, that's dropped from about 34% of our revenue to 3%, and using the digital permits for parking at the beach and the boat ramps. This is all important because the less we use our meters, the lower our cost for meter maintenance, meter replacement. Those are almost $10,000 for each of those meters, those replacement costs. We're going on to the rolling 12 months for permitting. In terms of the revenue changes that we have seen, the amnesty program that we had in place did result in getting rid of about $15,000 of old debt. We changed the collection company that we've been using. That also increased about $13,000 over last year. Our repeat offenders, we are using registration holds and towing. So that revenue, although it will take time to get it, they won't be able to register their vehicles if they have 3 or more citations from the city. And then they'll have to pay those before the state will reissue their decal. We had issues with rental car companies. Rental car companies had a habit of sending in a transfer of liability letter to us and saying, we're not responsible. We've done away with that. We've so far collected another $12,000 from the rental car companies. We have about 20 to 22,000 outstanding. We're still going after that to make sure that the rental car companies are also paying their fair share. We audited the credit card fee schedules that the city was using, that had in place. Those changes have resulted in about a little over $30,000 increase or savings to us in our credit card processing fees. And working with IT and finance, we have a payment card industry compliance, which is another $11,000. All these things seem like small numbers, but when you start adding them up, we're in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. We are sunsetting our current mobile interface. That will save us another $20,000 a year. And going to the two more popular ones, you probably heard things like Park Mobile and Way to Park, those sort of things. That will also offset some of our credit card fees as well. Those are huge companies that are used in every municipality around us. We're also exploring the text-to-pay option, which will save us even more. That's more convenient for our residents and visitors, and it also saves us money on processing. We're looking at also just increasing the overall efficiency of the unit, some other consistency issues, and certainly customer service. We have a new parking enforcement supervisor that should be coming on by the end of the month as well. Next slide. On the cross-departmental, Terry was up here a moment ago. We have just had an incredible relationship with Parks and Recreation since I've been here. It's been fantastic. We have been doing a lot of strategic planning together on special events, resource allocation, ensuring the best use of the resources, whether it be BSO, whether it be our own staff, whether it be maintenance, to make sure that we're not overworking them and that we're not paying for things that we don't need. We've had some good cost savings, and also we've done some incidental revenue generating by being smart about the way that we're handling these special events. We do have monthly meetings with them. We continue to have monthly meetings with them, strategy meetings with parks, community development, et cetera. And we work on the special events application processes where now even we have code enforcement, for example, involved in special events. And we didn't do that before. It is important, even in the, I would say in the last 3 months, code has had 2 issues on special event process or special event applications. That was kind of important that they saw those. So that's good. And then with the other departments, we're doing safety and security planning on all of our new capital projects. Anything that's built in the city goes through extensive safety and security review now. Everybody's looking at that to make sure that not only are we making sure that whoever's using that facility is going to have the safest environment, but that we also know that our assets are being protected as well. So we're looking for our persons and our property as well. We are doing extensive infrastructure security assessments on our infrastructure that already exists. That's a critical element to our emergency operations, but also the safety of our residents, and to ensure that any situation that does arise, that we're prepared to respond to that. We're working with, of course, fire and finance. The study is nearly complete. You heard about the fire assessment fee. And of course, we work quite extensively with grants management on trying to secure other funding opportunities for anything that we're doing in public safety as well. And that is it. If there are any questions.
Not seeing it.
All right, thank you very much.
Commissioner Drosky, did you want to say?
I did. Malfunction with my
Seemed very
light there.
incisive about it.
Problem with my light, sorry. So, Mr. Brimlow, do you have any, maybe not tonight, but maybe for the June, budget proceedings that we go through? Because I was the one that came up with the idea for your position, and I took a lot of intense questioning, rightfully so, from my colleagues who had questions about the creation of this position in this department. So it seems like what you were talking about tonight, just doing some quick math, that the cost savings and the cost recovery alone that you've been working on tends to have paid for itself and then some. So maybe if there's some type of analysis that we can have come budget time to prove not just to my colleague, but to the residents, this is the intended benefit that we had when the position was created. In addition to that, I mean, what you can't put a cost on is the preparedness and the procedures that you're putting in place for the safety of the persons and the employees and the property of the city. I don't think there's a cost that you can put on, a figure that you can put on that as well. So I'm glad to see that those things are going into place. You did mention at the very beginning of your comments that the change was incremental. Is there anything that we as the commission can do to speed that change up? I mean,
Yes.
We,
So what will be coming to you are some code issues, but you'll be prepped on those as we come up. We're looking at certain areas of the code that can better facilitate some safety issues, but also streamline some things that we already have in place. Some of those have to do with parking issues. Some of those have to do with some of the ways we handle special events. But those will be forthcoming. You know, essentially January is when some of these policies were able to be kicked in, giving you numbers today, I could be they could be appear to be higher than they need to be, only because we only have a few months that we're able to compare them to. But it is substantially higher, double-digit percentages on a lot of the savings and revenue side. And I think that you know, it's when we get to the budget hearings, there absolutely will be some of those numbers presented, and I think that all of the commission will be, and the citizens will be pleased with those.
okay, one of the other big concerns I had that led to the development of this position was the coordination amongst departments, or the lack thereof, really, for the hurricane and disaster preparedness, that you know, each department knew what they needed to do, but across the board, there wasn't that interaction, I guess, to have one department talking to the others. Are you facilitating that? And is that,
Yes.
now that we're entering hurricane season, any, you know, in 2 weeks? I mean, is that on your radar? And
It is, and
you
we've already
mentioned it,
had,
but it wasn't really overly specific.
right, we've already had some interdepartmental training. We had 5 sessions of interdepartmental training earlier in March. And from that, excuse me, from that, we ended up having a little bit additional training for places like finance, because there were some more specific things on the recovery of costs that they needed to be aware of. But we have a lot of new staff, so that was very important to get that training off the ground right away. Having the directors, assistant directors, and upper management working together on those trainings helped a lot. It opened up the door. There were a lot of questions that came out from those. It was a short time frame, but to get those 74, 75 people trained was a good task for us to complete. It also helped us test out some of the policies and protocols that we had been working with the consultant before to put in place. So we're a little bit more confident that those policies are what we need, and that those SOPs and checklists, just as an example, we have pages of checklists that start 96 hours out from any sort of an incident. This is anybody could do this. You could come and sit in my chair and do this by looking at the checklist. And you know exactly what needs to be done 96 hours out, 72 hours out, 48 hours out, 24 hours out. You know exactly what needs to be done. And that's important because any department can look at any department's checklist and they know that. And the way that we are trying to have our EOC design, certainly we each have our areas of expertise, but anybody should be able to come in, because we don't know what the disaster situation might be. Anybody should be able to come in and reasonably be expected to handle to a sufficient degree any of those positions, any of those emergency special function positions. So that's the goal with regard to that. That's important to me because that's what's going to ensure the safety of the residents the most, and to be able to respond as quickly as possible for whatever disaster there might be, including debris removal, including assessing the degree of damage. We've worked very hard on upgrading our mapping system, working with IT and GIS, where our maps now, I think we're the only city in Broward, of course, that has an integration of our disaster map, our law enforcement zone maps, our fire maps, federal maps are all integrated. So if we had a super big catastrophe like what they've had south of us, and you have federal groups coming in, they can pick up that piece of paper and there's absolutely no decoding necessary. That makes sense to them. We didn't have that before. So that's an important leap that we made in terms of that too. And that was possible because we brought on emergency management coordinator as well, that we can use the skills that they have. So we are moving in a positive direction. This is still work in progress, of course, and but it's going to be constant development. I mean, I'm happy with the development we've made so far, and I think in terms of the fiscal part of it, you definitely will see that during the budget times when we do the budget presentation.
And since it's brand new, I mean, I would like to see you back on quarterly basis, just to keep giving us, updates.
Sure.
Where you're going and how we can assist. I think it needs to be a team effort.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Brown. Appreciate it.
We're now on comments by mayor and city commission.
Okay, let's start with District 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of minor things. As you'll hopefully know by now, Oceans Blues and Blues will be this weekend from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock on the beach. So I hope to see everybody on out there. Also, we have the A1A Mobility Improvement Project. It's going to be starting at Hillsborough Mile and infiltrating here in Deerfield Beach. And they're going to have their open house on June 1st from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock at the Hillsborough Beach Town Hall. There'll be a virtual session before that from 5 to 6. But there's also a personalized in-house meeting. So I hope those who are living in District 1 that could be adversely affected by A1A and the construction take some time to see what's going to be happening in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. District 2.
Thank you, Mayor. There's going to be the JM Teen Center ribbon cutting. That's going to be tomorrow. That's going to be at 4 p.m. And this coming Thursday at 3:30 p.m. There's going to be an appreciation over at Deerfield Beach High School. It's probably going to change from what it was supposed to be, but it's supposed to be the principal, and there's some changes to that I've been told. But I think that they're still going to have that. There was a mentioning of Mr. McKeever passing. Just want to let everybody know that he was a really big community guy. I knew Vince really well, and he had some ideas about some things that he wanted to do in the city. He contacted me, but didn't get a chance to really lay out exactly a lot of the ideas and things that he wanted to do, and what his vision was. But you need to know he was a big time Deerfield guy, and he's going to be sorely missed. I had the pleasure of attending last Friday the League of Cities. Deerfield was represented pretty well, and Commissioner Drosky was installed as vice president, and it just was a really nice event. But that it has really stayed with me because it was so inspirational and motivational. Because Commissioner Bob Marison from he's the new Broward League of Cities president. These were like on every table. This and what this is like you can plant this, peppers, lettuce, and different things. And he said something was really, really inspirational. He said, start a community garden, feed your residents. And that's just stayed with me because a few years ago we tried to do that. There needed to be some motivation, it needed to be some passion, a lot of the things that was absolutely needed with that. There wasn't a follow through. So I'm going to ask the city manager if you would identify some city-owned property where a potential city a garden could go, and then you talk about it. But when he said that we're in tough times right now, go out and feed our residents for a city to take control of something like that is really big, and it's just something that we can do. And it was on every table. I actually first thought it was like flowers, but it's not. It's all about food and feeding people, and it's something that the city of Deerfield Beach ought to really take serious. It's just stayed with me since he said that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do. There was a lady, few years back, Barbara Miranda, who really took this serious. And it just was a lot of fun. One of the things that came from the commission was, he said, those things need to be well planned. Truth of the matter is, they really do. You just don't start one because it sounds good. And, but I think that we have the expertise and we have the residential interest to be able to do a good job in it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we can identify as potential spacing and to see what we can do as a city to be able to feed our residents. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Drew?
Believe it or not, no comment this evening.
Oh.
I know it's a first. I don't have a heart attack, Mike. It's okay.
Just,
I only have one comment tonight, that Saturday, June 4 is my next Saturday office hours from from 10 a.m. to noon. You can contact the city manager's office for an appointment. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
thank you. I will try to be brief here. You know, with storms that we've been having lately and entering into storm season as it comes along, I want to make sure that we're moving forward with our stormwater projects, especially in some of the neighborhoods not far from here that we've had some of the issues we've had both to the north and to the south. So if we could get an update on where we're at with our stormwater projects, that would be great. And make sure we're keeping the focus on that. I also want to say this, and I noticed tonight that the Broward County School Board voted today to do a district overhaul that increased their PR spending and cut back in areas such as teaching and learning.
Yeah.
And it's disappointing because one of the positions that was eliminated was its literacy director. Many of you may know that the Broward County School Board is trying to come forward with another bond and trying to get more money from the taxpayers to cover some of what they're now trying to say at this time around is what they're looking to do is a money that's going to go towards recruiting high quality teachers and staff, school security, safety, and enhancing essential programs such as mental health. It's interesting. When you ask people, they're always going to say, let's vote to give more money towards the schools. We did that last time around. And I think if we don't stop and take a look at what history has taught us, we're going to end up repeating ourselves. The disaster that was the last, in my opinion, the last time that the school board went out and went to the public to try to increase the money coming into them, left us with schools that were supposed to be lifted up, renovated, and done, and that never happened. Too many of those projects didn't even get off the ground. The cost have now exceeded what the bond money is brought in, and it's been an utter failure, in my opinion. I am disappointed to see that here they are again asking for the taxpayers to reach into their pockets to give towards what they're going to save for children, when quite frankly they have enough money in their coffers to do what they should be able to do and what they're looking to do with the money they have. It's not right. They're going to put more money into PR, which I think is nothing more than a way to try to get a hold of more taxpayer dollars. No one's ever going to say no to the children, but I think they should say no to the Broward County School Board. And it's definitely something I'm very passionate about. I want to applaud Board Member Good and Board Member Rupert, who voted against what happened today.
Yeah.
It was hastily done and it shouldn't have been done. And I certainly hope that the people vote down what is coming forward to them, because it's not what they think they're going to get. Ineptitude should not be rewarded. That's my opinion. The city of Buffalo had a tremendous, devastating tragedy this week, and it's the city of Buffalo, and it could easily be the city of Deerfield Beach or any other city around us. Tonight, we talked about the Haitian community and the Haitian Flag Day and the pride that we try to lift up that portion of our community and recognizing Haitian Flag Day. We talked about Haitian Pacific Islanders and some of the discrimination that they're feeling today. We've seen it in the what happened in Buffalo, the Black community. We see it in the Jewish community with some of the things we've had with anti-Semitism that's popped up. We have a very diverse community here in the city of Deerfield Beach. All of those groups that I just mentioned, as well as Jamaican, Brazilian community here, we're one big family. The rhetoric that seems to prevail in this country these days, that it seems to be really easy to be a racist and people wear it as a badge of pride now. I can't imagine how we've gone this far backwards, but I hope that this city, when we honor things like Haitian Flag Day and lift up our community and the different cultures and races that we have in the city, that we will not tolerate people who think that that their race is better than others, and that we do everything we can to prevent a tragedy like what happened in Buffalo from happening in our city or anywhere else ever again. That's all I have to say.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. We have a motion, and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?